multicultural PowerPoint issue, not straight enough, put it right, but good enough that Terry Bristol will be able to say something about the value context of engineering. Very pleased.
Okay, so this is one thing to say here is my background is really philosophy of science, and because of the inadequacies of the philosophy of science, I morphed into philosophy of engineering, which is a little bit different from that. So one thing I wanted to emphasize here is that I'm not talking about ethics. It is not about ethics. So to me, ethics is a negative heuristic. It's sort of doing the right thing, doing the thing right, you know. So make sure it's integrity, honesty, and so forth. And I think Kant had it right, you know. Don't lie, cheat, steal, because what comes around goes around. Okay. So the positive heuristic that I want to go over, I want to know what the value system of engineering is. Doing the right things. Okay. Now, some people think that that's not part of ethics. So William Wulf, who was the president of the National Academy of Engineering at the time, he was asked a question after a talk. He said, somebody said, well, you know what scientists do, they do discovery, you know, what do engineers do? And he said, whatever they'll pay us to do. He said, this was not a well thought out answer. So that's kind of like prostitution. Steve Goldman, who also is contributed in this sort of philosophy of engineering thing, sees engineers only as those who have degrees in engineering or have engineering in their title or something. So Goldman says, well, what engineers do is whatever their corporate or party bosses tell them to do. So in both these cases, the values of the engineer come from outside. Okay? So how did this happen? So famous thing is this guy, Vannevar Bush, led the Manhattan Project. He was the sort of main engineer during World War II and after, and so forth. And he wrote a book. He was asked, he said, well, you know, obviously technology is very important to the United States. It was very important when in the war. You know, what is the relationship between science and engineering? Okay, so he, you know, nicely in the book says, I don't really know, but he said, just for openers, let's say, you know, science is research and engineering is application. So, in effect, engineering at that point became applied science. Okay, was the idea. And I call this the scientization of engineering because in the engineering tradition, it was like, what happened to design? What happened to all these things? So, and all the engineers then were taught by scientists, you know, because what did they need to know? Well, they needed to know was science. They taught them science and then engineering. So this has been a problem for some time. So, but not everybody bought into that idea. And this is Vincenti was a professor of aeronautical engineering at Stanford for many years. Wrote a great book, which I highly recommend, called What Engineers Know and How They Know It. Anybody into epistemology of this stuff should read this. So Vincenti says, well, modern engineers are seen as taking over their knowledge from scientists and by some occasionally dramatic but probably intellectually uninteresting process, using this knowledge to come up with material artifacts. Okay. And then he says, engineers know from experience this is not true. One of his statements, he says, science doesn't tell you how to build an airplane. So what do engineers do? So science is about discovery, engineering is about practical problem solving, and usually in the engineering textbooks, the standard phrase is engineering problem of design. Well, what is the problem of design? So there's another group that put out a book called Engineering as a Social Enterprise. It's from National Academy of Engineering. A couple of these guys were on my board of directors at some point. And they say, basically they say, no, engineering does have an agenda, and the agenda is about society. I think the second presentation earlier today, I was trying to say that. So and they use the fact that there's a failure to recognize the role of engineering in advancing society. And they mention feeding people, housing, protecting society, improving communication, transportation, meeting the challenges of space exploration, for instance, exploiting automation, helping underprivileged people. And it's these challenges that engineering should direct itself. So they're suggesting that engineering has an internal agenda, okay? Regardless of what the bosses say. Now, So I think what's going on here is like, I talk philosophy of engineering rather than philosophy of technology. Philosophy of engineering, there's a rising consciousness in the engineering community. Mostly, I think Silicon Valley, California is the real center of this. But, you know, it's been going on for some time. Bill Gates, they say, well, you know, what's exciting? So we're bringing in the future. That's what's exciting about engineering. We're bringing in the future. And now we have these things where we have engineers who are the head of companies. Okay, so it's not the. Okay, so another one, Steve Jobs, also very different. Engineers should be thinking differently, be imaginative, think outside the box, be challenged, so forth. This is the latest guy, very cool guy, Elon Musk, if you don't know him. Tesla, electric cars, SpaceX, private space exploration. He also has another firm, is on called Solar City, which is. Now there's a good series out, if any of you get this, I don't know, get it in China probably, called How We Got to Now. It's a really good history of technology and civilization, and he goes through 6 different inventions or areas of invention. Glass, the first person in Venice who figured out how to make clear glass, and then think of all the applications of that since. Amazing, okay? And then he goes into cold, how we figured out ice and cold and so forth. He goes into sound. Clean, the first, putting, they thought when you put chlorine in water to disinfect, they're like, you're going to poison everybody else. So, well, I'm going to figure it out. And then time things in life. So anyway, it's a great series. It talks about how civilization has developed as a result of technological innovations. Okay? Highly recommend it. Okay, so engineering is practical problem solving. What is practical problem solving? I love this from Herb Simon, his famous, his Nobel laureate in economics, but in systems theory and so forth. And Simon says, practical problem solving in general is the attempt to move from a current state of affairs to a future, more desirable state of affairs. And that's pretty straightforward, right? So, but you see in there is values. Okay? In science, we don't see, science problem solving, we don't see values so clear. In engineering, there's clearly a value component here. So what am This is in a book called Sciences of the Artificial. Critique of practical reason. What is practical reason? That's the engineering. It's practical reason. Yeah? So Kant sort of points out what the problem of design is, and he says it's about how we should live. Okay, and how we should live, that's the standard moral question. So what Kant says in the Critique of Practical Reason is that practical reason is moral reasoning. The context of practical reason is moral reasoning. Okay? How we should live. How we should. So that was my first conclusion. Oh, so if you think I'm not the only one that's crazy here, so there's a new book out by this guy Michael Shermer, who's Mr. Skeptic, and it's called The Moral Arc. And he's making the case. A couple of people doing the same thing, and saying. He uses the word science, but it's really engineering. This is how science and reason lead humanity towards truth, justice, and freedom. So what he's saying is, as engineering advances, morality advances. So he goes back through civilization and says, look at this, what's going on. So as we make all these engineering advances and technological advances, there's a moral advance as well, which is what you would expect from Kant. So, first conclusion, so far, engineering is practical problem solving. Engineering is dedicated to bringing forth a more desirable future. That's a general thing. And so the value context of engineering method and practice is actually the moral context. So that's the easy answer. Okay, now it gets more interesting. So, part 2, so this is, so that's a nice idea. So it's like bringing forth more desirable world, and it's more moral, and all that. How are you going to do that? Somebody wrote an article recently in Chronicle of Higher Education and said maybe engineers should become philosophers. And the flip side is maybe philosophers should become engineers. This is a variation on Plato. Should the philosopher king? But so the big question, the challenge then, this is all great. Practical problem solving, bringing in a better world, moral context. So how are we going to do? Who's going to make those decisions? How are we doing that? How do we bring that moral? So what should engineers do? And part of this I like to think of in the European existentialists. They say, so this is the dilemma. So we have the ability to work in the world, we have the ability to do things, but we don't have any script. Okay? So this is existential angst. It's like, we don't know what to do. So I know how to do things in the world. What should I do? No one to tell me. I don't know what to do. Okay, so what do we do here? So that's the dilemma. Okay, so most of the rest is about this. So this is, there's a paradigm shift that happened in the 21st century. And a couple of, we talked a little about it. So both in physics and in philosophy, there was a big shift. And I want is this weird? This is Niels Bohr, the founder of quantum theory. And when he was inducted into the Order of the Elephant, these are a bunch of elephants around here. So the Order of the Elephant, to be honored. This is his coat of arms. What is quantum theory doing with this in the middle? Huh? Okay, so and the thing up here says contrary. So it says contraries are complementary. Okay, quantum theory is about the complementarity of wave and particles. Yes, about these two different. Right. So what? So he sees something here, maybe. The other paradigm shift in philosophy, it was in philosophy of science, mostly associated with Thomas Kuhn. And I love this paradigm shift thing because the little chicken's inside the egg, and he has a view of the world when he's inside the egg, but only when he comes out of the egg does he understand the limits of his prior thinking. This is why I call this paradigm shift kind of an awakening too. It's a generalization of, and to understand that we weren't really doing science, we were doing engineering. So a crucial thing about both quantum theory and relativity is that they're participant theories. Okay? So what that means is that in order to understand what I'm observing, I need to understand how I'm looking. Okay? So if I look at things the world this way, I see particle type phenomena. If I look this way, I see wave phenomena. What's reality? Okay? We don't know. Actually, Einstein has a great quote. He said in Newton, we sort of knew what reality was. It was a point in space and time, absolute simultaneity. And he said, and in Maxwell, we knew what it was. It was a field distributed in space and time. So in quantum theory, it's a little more difficult to tell what it is because you can't. And Einstein still wanted to state objectivity. This is what I call a spectator view. So this is scientists standing outside the world. The world is objective reality out here. We're studying it. We don't interfere with it. The important thing about objective reality, it better stay the same if I'm doing science so I can get closer and closer to understand it. If you just start moving around, I'm not going to find it. Okay? So there's a presupposition that reality is constant and that the laws governing reality are time, space, invariant. So he says, well, laws governing the universe at the beginning of the Big Bang and at the end of the universe are always the same. They're going to be the same. That's an assumption. And there's an assumption tied to this idea, the spectator version. So some of Bohr's colleagues say, wait a minute, what is objective? What is quantum reality? What is the underlying reality? And he says, there is no quantum reality. Get over it. No objective quantum. Get over it. Just forget it, you guys. So the other, in the philosophy, I think the better version of this same transition is the move from, this is Dewey's version. He talks about two different representations of inquiry. Scientific inquiry and engineering inquiry. Scientific inquiry is a spectator idea. So I'm doing it. And the participant thing, we're first to conclude that we're part of reality. Okay? And so what we're doing in learning about reality, we're not learning about reality out there. So what are we doing? So as we learn, so the idea here is that we're embodied agents. And learning has to be part of reality. There's a thing I call, from another American pragmatist, Josiah Royce, called Royce's criterion of self-referential coherence. And basically he says this, if everything's determined, okay, there's these laws governing everything we're doing is determined by these laws, why are we questioning? What is inquiry about? I mean, it's all determined anyway, there's no point to it. Inquiry doesn't make any sense in the scientific worldview. In the engineering worldview, is self-referentially consistent. Okay? We can see ourselves as part of reality. So as we learn, the universe develops. So what we're really doing as participants, we're actually developing the universe. So along with this problem shift, this paradigm shift, there's also a problem shift. So the problem for the spectator is how does the world work? How does the world work? Okay, I want to know, what are the laws governing the world? How does the world work? For the engineer, participant engineer is different. It's how to work. I want to know how to work in the world. And in problem solving, I want to know how to bring forth a more desirable future. Okay, so this is a participant. So I'm saying we've moved from, a lot of people are still resisting, but we've moved from a scientific spectator view of the world, where the world's constant, and we're somehow standing outside of it trying to understand it, to a participant worldview. We're actually part of the universe, and we're going to. So my personal path, I started in astronomy and astrophysics. These are my kind of mentors. I started in astrophysics, and then I ran into quantum theory and go like, wait a minute, I thought we were trying to understand the laws of the universe. We weren't doing this, so what are we doing? So I switched into philosophy of science, and I found all the problems in philosophy of science, and they led me to philosophy of engineering. So this is not new. So before the scientization of engineering, there was an engineering tradition, really good engineering tradition in France, the École Polytechnique, and as I call Carnot's Epiphany. Okay, and Carnot's Epiphany was that we're engineers in a world of engineering. We're not cogs in the clockwork universe, Newtonian clockwork. We're engineers in a world of engineering. So I'm engineering, you're engineering, everybody's engineering, the plants are engineering. So the world is about engineering, and it's about engineering, learning, and development. So, a couple things. One is back to complementarity here and wave particle system. So, a couple things we know. So, mainly the observables are conjugates. If you want to go back, where does this all come from? They're from conjugate variables. Okay, that means in all three conjugate variables are everywhere. Rest and motion. Energy and time, but they're everything, all over the place. If you don't have conjugates, the universe is nothing. So, and orphans are conjugates or contraries, and observer choices then are between contraries. Okay, so when I'm making a choice of how to observe, I'm making a choice between qualitatively different options. All right, so this is what I call Heisenberg's insight. It's a series. Let me take you through this. So. Okay, so we know that the phenomena are complementary. Okay, particle phenomena and wave phenomena are complementary. Okay, but also the experimental setups. So I set up an experiment this way. I see particle phenomena. I set it up this way. I see wave phenomena. Okay, so those experimental setups are complementary. So the actions I take to set up one. And the actions I take to set up another, those are complementary. So in the world, there are complementary actions. Okay? Next thing. So Newtonian research program, Maxwellian research program are also complementary. And these are paradigms. So this is one way of problem solving in the world. So these are the Newtonian program was one way of trying to understand the world. Maxwellian research program, another way of trying to understand the world. But when we move these into the participant framework, these are different problem-solving approaches. Okay? So now I'm going to kick this up. Think back to engineering as a social enterprise. So again, we'll put Michael Oakeshott at LSE, University of London. And Oakeshott points out that all societies have both a competitive and cooperative aspect. Individualism and socialism. Every society has both aspects. Okay? There's no purely one or purely the other. Okay? So it's always this in between. And De Broglie in quantum theory was very important. He said particle and wave are interpenetrating opposites. Okay? What that means is for every particle observation, there's a wave aspect. for every wave observation, there's a particle aspect. Okay, so that's what Oakeshott's saying. All societies have both these. So Dewey is saying all real observations have both aspects. Okay, but we emphasize. They're just points of emphasis. So I might think this. So imagine you walk a soccer game, okay, football game. You're observing this game. Are you observing competitive behavior or cooperative behavior? I would say, depends on how you want to look at it. There's competition going on, there's cooperation going on. And the argument is you can't actually have a game without some cooperation. You have to know what the rules are, where the goals are going to be set, what's a foul. Those are all cooperative things in order to have competition. Okay? So you can't have, there's nothing like a pure, and if you had a game where everything that you did was specified by the rules, there's no competition anymore, but that's, they don't have a game anymore. It's just a mechanical device. So you have two thought experiments. One is, if I take a bunch of Republicans and I put them on an island, they'll soon split into Republicans and Democrats. Okay? If I put a bunch of Democrats on an island, they'll split into Republicans and Democrats. Now why is that? It's because there's something about the interplay of these opposites. Okay? The interplay of opposites, which is very big. And the important part of the complementarity thing is the interplay of these opposites is non-symmetric. Okay, in standard mechanics, you have Newton's third law. Every action has an equal opposite reaction. What's the net change? 0. Okay, so it's always a zero-sum game. Everything's 0, no gain, no loss. The only way you get ahead in the world is to hurt somebody else. Okay, so what it's saying is the participant model is forcing us to the conclusion that there are these complementary, interacting, problem-solving approaches to how to organize society or a program or which is right. Okay. Now, one thing you do is if you're on that island, then you say, the only problem is that these Republicans over here, we can get rid of them, then it'd be great. Well, then you would have an island with only one. Well, soon that would split up again. Okay? And the argument is that there's something dynamic about this interplay of these opposites that allows development to happen. Okay? And if you were actually able to get only one way of thinking, it would fall apart. So the second one is a kind of a Taoist thing, the path. So the idea is, so imagine that the problem of life is to stay on the path, the Tao. And somebody says to you, so every time, whenever you're in doubt, which is pretty much always turn to the left. And the other group says, no, when you're on the path, when you're in doubt, always turn to the right. Well, each of these spins in on itself. Okay, so if you always turn to the right, it's ideological, it's like destroying, on the island, it's like destroying the other side. Okay, so to stay in the path, you have to work with these both. Okay, and it's a traditional thing. It's called a middle way. Okay? Yeah. So, and if you have some particular view of the world, the only way that you can advance your understanding, become more enlightened and awake, if you like, is to find out what the limits of your way of thinking are. A certain way of thinking. How do I learn? Well, I need to find out what's wrong with what the limit is of my understanding. The only way you're going to find the limit of your understanding is from the other side. Okay, from somebody who has a different point of view. So this is kind of my second conclusion. So the positive heuristic for engineering. One thing is your opposition is your best resource. So there's a Christian thing. So it's, Jesus says, always sit and invite your enemy to the table. I say that because it's the same sort of thing. Now the other part of this is something called I call it the parliamentary attitude. The parliamentary attitude is the idea of the loyal opposition. An important part of the relationship between these different problem-solving agendas is they talk past each other. You ever, I don't know, in the United States, dialogue, like crazy. Like Republicans say this is the way the world is, the Democrats say this is the world is, and they all cite evidence and they talk right past each other. Because these are different, these are incommensurable, they're qualitatively different ways of looking at the world. Okay? So they go ahead. So we have a communication problem here, and the only way to solve it is to listen to the opposition. And there's a approach to this to say you sit down and two people are on opposite sides, and you sit down and you say, okay, you tell me what your position is, and then you say, and then I have to tell you back what you said, and I have to keep trying until you say, yeah, okay, now you understand what I've said, and then you can tell your position, and he has to tell it back to you until you agree that he has it. When that happens, almost like magic, they start talking together. They start finding the middle ground. Okay? So this is okay. So what we want to do, what this is about, in mechanics, you see a lot of game theory. There's a lot of zero-sum game. And if you know Richard Dawkins in evolution, it's like the only way there's selfishness is defined in terms of zero-sum. So in order to do something selfish to get ahead, you actually have to hurt somebody else. Okay? And altruism, doing something to help other people, the only way you can do that is to hurt yourself, because it's all zero-sum. So, and it's all mechanics. It makes no sense. And if engineering is operating that, there's nothing. So the basic idea is to seek win-win relationships. And a win-win relationship is how these work together. Okay, so the problem of engineering is basically how we should live, and how we should live better. How do we make our life better? And the difficulty is to try to capture is you see in this Taoist thing of these opposite interplay of opposites. Okay? This idea of interplay of opposites is not new. And it goes back in the Eastern tradition through the Tao. You see it in Western philosophy as well. The interplay of opposites, Heraclitus and Parmenides and so forth. So this is a very, very old tradition. It says basically the problem of how we should live is inherently problematic. Because in order to make the world better, it's qualitatively better. You can't, it's not mechanical. Like some people, my friend Stephen Hawking at one point wanted to say that maybe we could turn science over to computers one day. Maybe we could turn engineering over to computers. Not going to happen. Can't happen because it's these opposites. And there's no mechanical way to go forward. Okay, how we go forward is the interplay of these opposites. So really, this is how should we live? It's also about how should we relate to each other. Okay, this is a standard moral question. So how should we relate? And this is like Kantian. The negative heuristic is saying, well, don't lie, cheat, steal, because you'll be destructive. So Dewey's version of how engineering evolution happens. He calls it the construction of the good. So what evolution is, and what we want to do in engineering is we are in a universe which is getting better through our actions, and the process is the construction of the good. So in the end, American pragmatist Charles Sanders Peirce, before Dewey, and all this goes back to Hegel. So if you start with Hegel and Schelling, it goes off to Marx is one way. It goes off to American pragmatism is the other way to do it. And Peirce was one of the first American pragmatists, and William James, and then went on to do it. So Peirce wrote this famous speculative article. He says, what's the universe about? Okay. And in the article, he speculates that basically it's about love. So it's the interplay of these opposites. When it goes right, like in the Tao, the male and the female work together, everything works best. So this is about evolutionary love, and I think that fits into the Taoist theme. Okay, so enough. Questions?
Okay. Thank you. Round of applause.
I left out a lot of important stuff, so maybe you have some questions. Yep.
Yes. Thank you, wonderful speech. Thank you. My question is, to win is a dream. My opinion is, to win is a dream.
I don't understand what you're saying.
To win, win. Maybe it's a dream. Win.
Win-win, yeah.
Maybe it's a dream. For almost people, if you just use in Chinese was 性爱 love and evolution. If the people have some religions, maybe do it, maybe can do it. But maybe it's very difficult.
There's also, I think in Northeastern University here, don't you have process philosophy? Someone? Are they teaching process philosophy? I think Whitehead. I know in China now, somebody told me there are 20 different universities teaching process philosophy, which is very much linked to pragmatism. The process philosophy, Whitehead also wrote an article called, a book called "The Religion in the Making." And part of it saying is like Christianity, all these different, with all the, everybody has their priests and all this sort of stuff. So these are just historical accidents. There could have been a lot of other things related. Each one of those religions is trying to come up with some rules of how to live. How should they live? They're moral theories. Okay? And so what we're linking here is that engineering and religion now become one. Okay, so that questions of fact and questions of value are now inseparable. And engineering is the middle between religion and science. Extreme religion and extreme science. Engineering has elements of both. Yep.
A simple question. Where is this picture from?
Where is what?
This picture.
Where is it from? I don't know on the internet.
International. What do you mean she? Black.
I don't even know what this means.
Maybe could you tell us
What does it mean?
what these mean?
This male and female, isn't it?
Hope. That's hope.
Hope and trust.
Hope.
This is hope,
Yeah.
and this is trust.
Trust. See, yeah, both those are very. So one of the things that happens in the negative heuristic, where people lie, cheat, and steal, what do you lose? You lose trust. And another thing in this idea of seeking win-win relationships, one of the big questions is, how do I know? So you and I are on opposite sides. You say, I think we should take the society this way. You say, no, I think we should take the society that way. And we're talking, we go back and forth, and we get into how do we know? Do we know there's a solution? Do we know there's a win-win? Okay, in some sense the answer is no, because if I knew there was an answer out there, then I'd already have it. So a very important part of engineering design problem is hope. Okay, I got to believe that I'm actually able to make the world better. Okay, if I'm an engineer, if you want to be a self-respecting engineer, you've got to believe that it's possible to make the world better. So this hope. Any questions? Yeah.
What's the belief of philosophy?
What?
You just explained the belief of an engineer. What would you define as
Well, it is. I mean,
philosophy. What's the belief of a philosopher and how combined?
So it's a big part of it is this idea, because what I want to get apart is in this second part is the relationship of the big paradigm shift in physics. Okay, and how that says that the universe is actually made up of all these complementary processes. Okay? And then when we embody that, and because we're embodied in the universe, so it's saying essentially that the universe, I mean the Taoist, the big Taoist insight is that. So it also says, for instance, there's a thing called, I'm just trying to get into, one of the implications of this is called sacred geometry. Sacred geometry? It says that if these actions are seen with Heisenberg's insight, it's not only that the phenomena are complementary, the experimental setups are complementary, these two different types of structure are complementary. So they're complementary structures. Complementary actions, and the interplay of the opposites is productive. Okay? It's not symmetric. In classical mechanics, action reaction, John Barrow has a great book called The Book of Nothing. Because if you add up all the charge in the universe, you add up all the E equals mc squared action, and where does it all add? It adds up to 0. There's no universe. And Sean Carroll has a great book called From Eternity to Here. He says, like, you can't get the universe started. Because there's no, I mean, where did the Big Bang come from? The Big Bang is evidence against science. There's no way to explain the historical universe within science. And there's all these, if you look at Steven Weinberg's book, First 3 Minutes, it's a series like, how do we come for the universe? And you see what he has is a whole series of symmetry breaking, spontaneous symmetry breaking events. Okay? You can't explain symmetry breaking events in a universe that you assume is symmetric. It's not possible. So all these symmetry breaking events and all this evolution of the universe does not make sense in the scientific worldview. Now, if you want to go to the next, I didn't big picture here. I've only dealt with engineering in the social context. There's an engineering view of biological evolution. Do I have a little bit of time?
But we have
2 minutes.
we have about 8 minutes left. So maybe after this question, we'll open it up, and there may be some really nice interplay between Kayatoka's presentation and your presentation.
Sure.
So but feel free.
Very, very quick. So there's a book by a guy named Robert Reed at University of Victoria called Biological Emergence: Evolution by Natural Experiment. And it's basically it's viewing biological evolution as an engineering enterprise. Okay, we learn, and it's all about exploration and experimentation, and that's what biological systems are doing. The idea of random mutations arising from errors. I mean, this is stupid. I mean, you suppose you have laws there. I mean, it's like saying, well, I have this experiment and I predict this, and whoop, that didn't happen. You say, well, sometimes the universe makes mistakes. What is this? I mean, it's nonsense. The whole Darwinian model is just silly. And so anyway, so there is an engineering version of that. And if you take one step further back, this leads to the idea the whole cosmos is an engineering enterprise. And this goes back to Plato about the Timaeus. Look at Plato's essay called the Timaeus. It sees the mind of the universe, of which we are all parts, is the master craftsman, which is the engineer. Anyway, okay.
All right. Thank you. Let me make one comment that maybe will lead to another line of discussion here. The development of the science of thermodynamics took place because of the invention of the steam engine.
Yes.
And that may be the most obvious case where that relationship of engineering being applied science completely falls apart, and that we find out that in fact what we want to learn has practical implications most of the time.
Yes.
Right. So it's a great question there. Kiyatoka, I was wondering if you wanted to make some kind of comment about the complementarity that Terry has been emphasizing.
About the individual in the group, yeah?
About the individual in the group in between the Eastern and Western.
I'll make this later.
Oh, okay.
Can I make one comment about thermodynamics real quick?
Sure.
Okay, but why we still have the scientists talking about string theory and all this other stuff? There's a book by a guy called Farewell to Reality, and he talks about what's going on in physics now. He calls it fairy tale physics. He's just making stuff up, like, oh, we're just string theory. Of course, we can't test it. So, how are we going to get the physics community to realize this sort of model? Because they're still doing mechanics. They still want to. They want to hang on to the old traditions. How are we going to get them back? And I'm talking about this a lot, and some Brian Greene, the American physicist, big time with string theory. I'm talking to Brian about it, and really it's all about thermodynamics. Because Boltzmann and all that stuff is all mechanical thermodynamics. Okay? There's another thermodynamics, which is basically starts with Carnot. And Carnot says this. So mechanical thermodynamics, the principle of least action is part of mechanics. There's from here to there, there's always the least action. Carnot says something different. Carnot says all actions have a loss. Nothing can happen in the world without this bifurcation going on. Okay? So there's no perfect machine. With a perfect machine, we have perpetual motion. I think mechanics really assumes the universe is perpetual motion. But Carnot says no. There's this thing, and an important part of this Carnot's thermodynamics is that the loss cannot be recovered to support the original action. Yeah? That's the whole idea. It's a loss. There's a central loss. There's no way out of it. Okay? There's always a loss. So that thermodynamics turns out is an engineering thermodynamics. And that's a start. And engineering thermodynamics is in conflict with Boltzmann thermodynamics. So as I put it, either Boltzmann thermodynamics sees Carnot as a special case, or Carnot sees Boltzmann as a special case. And I think the answer is really obvious. That Boltzmann is a very, very idealized, limited application area. You have to have ideal gases and all this sort of stuff. Now, if you guys can go online, which you can in China, to YouTube, I gave a talk a year ago about this, and there's something called Lovelock's problem. And Lovelock's problem is that the atmosphere of the Earth is in thermodynamic non-equilibrium. Now, physics assumes that the universe is always going to be in equilibrium. Okay? So action and reaction is always the same. It should be in equilibrium. That's why there's no explanation of the Big Bang either. It should always be in equilibrium. So Lovelock observes that the Earth's atmosphere is in non-equilibrium. It's all this oxygen. Okay, and you can go back through it. You also see that this has been in non-equilibrium for at least 3 billion years. You can look back through the geological record, and you can see that oxygen was around the formation of all these minerals. Okay, that's a very fundamental problem, and the key is this simple version. The oxygen producers, like the plants, and CO2 producers like us, these are complementary processes. This is kind of how it works. And it's the balance and interplay of these opposite processes in the biological system that actually creates this non-equilibrium thing, and it gets more and more and more powerful. There's a book by Carl Sagan's son, Dorian Sagan, and it basically says, it's called Into the Cool. It basically says that the evolution of the biosphere is like the evolution of an engine, and the engine's getting more and more and more powerful. Anyway.